Friends, first of all, please know how much you are missed here in Alumni Hall, as well as at the university. I miss gathering with you on Sundays for cookie nights and being able to pray with you in person. Please know that all of us continue to hold you in prayer and to think of you and your family and loved ones and all those who are impacted by this pandemic. And we'll continue to pray for you. Today in our gospel, we hear of the passion from the Gospel of St. Matthew. I'd like to reflect for a bit on that passion, and especially how that impacted the disciples, those closest followers of Jesus. My friends, the disciples had so many expectations for Jesus. They had watched him raise the dead to new life. They'd watched as he cured the sick, as he fed the thousands. They had watched him proclaim a kingdom, the coming of the kingdom of God. And they believed him to be the Messiah, the one who had been promised, the one that they had hoped for so long. My friends, there were so many moments of great hope and expectation throughout this time of following Jesus. Think of going up on that mountain of the Transfiguration, when Peter, James, and John were able to be with Jesus, and they watched him turn a dazzling white, and they heard that voice from on high say, "Behold my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." All of these expectations, all of these hopes seem to be lost in the passion of Jesus Christ. All of this sudden, this person they believed to be the Messiah, the person that they had known to be who God had promised, was arrested, was humiliated, was spat upon, put on trial, and ultimately was nailed to a cross and was given the death of a common criminal, among other common criminals. It must have been such a dark moment for all who followed Jesus. A sense of loss, a sense of all those expectations being undone. Additionally, Jesus' followers had to contend with the fact that they themselves had failed in their lives. Peter, James, and John, who were invited with Jesus to the garden to go and to pray with Jesus in these last moments before his arrest, they were asked to stay awake with Jesus, to keep vigil with him. And yet, overcome with tiredness, they fall asleep. 3 times Jesus comes to them and asks them simply to stay with them, to be with him in this moment of great agony. And then there's Peter. Peter, before Jesus' arrest, promises that he will never deny Jesus, that Peter will follow him even into death. And yet, as we hear in today's gospel, when Jesus is ultimately arrested and put on trial, and when Peter is confronted with members of the high priest household, 3 times he denies knowing Jesus. He denies being his follower. And it's only after the cock crows that Peter realizes what he's done. My friends, this moment of Good Friday, this moment of the cross, seems like it was the end of all of these hopes and expectations. It was a time when people are confronted with their own sinfulness, their own inabilities to be fully followers of Jesus Christ. And it was such a dark moment. And I imagine in that moment, it was so hard to see anything beyond the death and destruction and loss of hope. Perhaps in some ways, we feel that own darkness in this, our Good Friday moment. We see a loss of those things that we had hoped for, that we had expected of our semester and of our lives. For those of you who are seniors, I imagine all of your hopes for the second part of the semester, the hopes of being able to gather with your classmates and celebrate these 4 remarkable years here at the university. It feels like an end. We look around the world today and we see so much loss and so much destruction. We see so much hopelessness as we face a pandemic that we're still trying to understand how fully to respond to. We see especially those who are most weak and most vulnerable in our societies being impacted by it. It's a pretty dark moment for each of us. And I think we can begin to identify with the disciples and what they must have felt like on Good Friday. My friend, the amazing thing about this story is that Good Friday is not the end. As difficult, as hopeless, as bleak, and as dark as Good Friday seemed, we know that it was not the end. That while we have to acknowledge the cross and all of the implications of the cross in the lives of Jesus and in his followers, that there's something beyond it. That there was resurrection and new life that was offered on Easter Sunday. And that because of Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, the same hope exists for each one of us. That as dark as different moments in our lives seem, as hopeless as it can seem at times, that these moments are not the end. That because of Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, this same hope is offered to each one of us. There's a beautiful passage in our Constitutions of the Congregation of Holy Cross that I'd like to share with you today. In our Constitutions, we hear, "There is no failure the Lord's love cannot reverse, no humiliation he cannot exchange for blessing, no anger he cannot dissolve, no routine he cannot transfigure. All is swallowed up in victory. It remains only for us to find how even the cross can be borne as a gift." My friends, as we enter into Holy Week, and as we mark this time where we celebrate Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, let us hold on to the hope of the cross. That while we acknowledge the sufferings that existed both in Jesus' time as well as in our own lives now, that these crosses are not the end. That there's resurrection and new life that's offered to us on Easter Sunday. As we walk through this Holy Week, let us be people of hope. Let us acknowledge the difficulties and struggles in our lives and in the lives of others. But also let's stand at the foot of each other's crosses and point to the hope that exists for them, the hope that is offered to us by Jesus Christ.